famine that ravaged Ireland's population and potatoes in the mid-1800s was caused by more than the fungus that swept across the countryside. It was the effect of centuries of oppression and a government that turned its back on the needs of human beings. No one came to save the starving or the sick, so many set out to find a future elsewhere. When the British conquered Ireland many years earlier, they began enacting laws limiting the rights of the Irish Catholic majority, including voting, holding office, and owning land. The farmable land was predominantly owned by British and Irish Protestant gentry who lived abroad and rented the land to local Protestant landlords, who divided the land into smaller and smaller sections to gain more in rent. The poor tenant farmers paid their rent and crops and were forced to live a life of subsistence farming. The land available to the poor further complicated the problem. These areas are in the southern and western sections of Ireland where the soil is rocky or swampy. The potatoes seemed to answer all of the Irish peasants' prayers. The potatoes thrived in Ireland's cool, moist climate and would grow in wet or rocky soil. They required little labor, no major equipment, and a single acre could yield up to 12 tons of potatoes, enough to feed a family of 6 for a year with leftovers going to the family's animals. By the 1800s, the potato was the primary crop eaten by Irish peasants, many of who relied solely on the powerful plant.
Well, it's by the hush, me boys, and sure that's to hold your noise, and listen to poor Paddy's sad narration. I was by hunger pressed, and in poverty distressed, so I took a thought I'd leave the Irish nation.
The famine officially began in the fall of 1845 and lasted until 1852. The blight was triggered by a fungus that traveled to Europe aboard ships from America. The deadly mold-like organism sailed along Ireland's winds and was soon wreaking havoc on the country's entire potato crop. Even one potato infected with the disease could turn an entire harvest into a mound of smelly black slime. Crop losses incurred during the fall of 1845 led to extreme food shortages beginning in the spring of 1846. People began to panic and started selling what little livestock and possessions they had in order to feed their families. Once those resources were depleted, desperation led people to eat unconventional items, including grass, tree bark, caps, nettles, and seaweed. They even resorted to consuming rotten food, including the diseased potatoes, which caused illness.
Oh, listen to the tale of a poor Irish harper, and scorn not the strings in his old withered hand. Oh, son, I love my native land with energy and pride, until a blight came on the crops, the sheep and the cattle died. The rents and taxes were to pay, I could not them redeem, and that's the cruel reason why I left old Skibbereen.
The blight continued and left Ireland's fields fruitless. Starving people were evicted since they had no harvest to pay their rent. To ensure the evicted farmers would not return, the small cottages they called home were destroyed. They were left homeless, and many resorted to building scalps, or deep burrows dug into the ground and covered with branches and earth, which offered little protection from the elements. Soon the dead began lining the roadsides, fields, and ditches.
The landlord's agents standing with their crowbars in their hands, for little children watch the fire and do not understand. Just another family evicted from their home, and the memory never faded for one brave man from Mayo.
Due to their weakened state, the starving people could not fight off diseases. Infections such as typhus, dysentery, relapsing fever, and cholera consumed thousands like a gluttonous beast. British government decided to use ineffective small-scale relief measures, which did little to ease the suffering of the Irish peasantry. To make matters worse, the British government believed in a laissez-faire economic policy and refused to interfere with private enterprise or property owner. The most infuriating reason for the extreme losses of life during the famine was the fact there was not a food shortage in Ireland at the time. During the famine, Ireland continued to export livestock and large quantities of grain to England and other countries. The greedy landowners were more concerned about maintaining their profits than helping the suffering masses. Approximately 1 million Irish peasants died during the Great Hunger while estate owners filled their wallets. The rot of the mid-1800s was not only the result of the potato blight, but also hundreds of years of injustice and forced poverty. It was a social rot that eats away at a society when basic human kindness and empathy is decayed from years of intolerance and prejudice. The putrefaction continued until the people had no choice but to run away to another land and start a new life. The horror of the famine and the wrongs incurred by the Irish people should stand as a vivid reminder of what can happen when a society neglects its people.